The tears only God saw will become your miracle. Have you ever wondered why God allows you to cry in silence? Why in moments of despair, when your heart breaks and no one seems to notice, heaven remains so still? What if that silence isn't distance, but divine design? Today, you will discover the true purpose behind the tears only God saw, and why they are not signs of weakness, but seeds of your miracle. Because maybe what you're living right now isn't punishment. It's preparation for something far greater than you imagine. I know this feeling deeply. I've been there, in the darkness of unanswered prayers, where every tear felt like proof that God was far away. But I learned something sacred in those moments. Heaven never ignores the cry of a sincere heart. Every drop that fell from your eyes became a whisper that reached the throne of God, shaping the miracle that was already being written in silence. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to reveal next might completely change the way you understand divine silence and show you that your pain was never a sign of abandonment, but the very doorway to your miracle. The cry heaven never forgot. There are cries that never reach human ears but shake the gates of heaven. You know those moments when pain becomes too heavy to describe, when you try to speak but the words fall apart before leaving your mouth? The world sees a calm face, but heaven sees the storm within you. That cry, the one you thought vanished into the darkness, was never ignored. It rose like a song only God could hear. He heard the sound of your breaking, and he turned his face toward you, not in judgment, but in compassion. What no one else noticed, he recorded with divine precision. Every tear that touched your pillow was counted. Every sigh that escaped your chest was remembered. Heaven keeps a perfect record of what the earth tries to overlook. You may have felt invisible, as if your suffering disappeared into an empty night. But in that silence, something sacred was happening. God was gathering your pain, shaping it, transforming it. The moment your tears fell, heaven began to move. Angels stood still because the sound of your cry carried the weight of faith still fighting to believe. And in the spiritual realm, that sound has power. God doesn't respond to noise, he responds to sincerity. He listens not to the volume of your voice, but to the truth behind your silence. Those tears, though unseen, spoke louder than any prayer you could have uttered. Sometimes we think God has forgotten us because we mistake his silence for absence. But heaven's silence is never indifference, it's orchestration. God is not ignoring you, he is arranging the pieces of your miracle. The delay you feel is not denial, it's design. He uses your tears as divine ink to write the next chapter of your life. Every drop is a word, every sob a sentence in the story of redemption he's preparing. You may not see it yet, but what broke you will soon bless you. What made you weep will soon make you worship. When your heart cried out and no one came to help, he was already there, unseen, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal what he has been building in secret. Sometimes the most profound miracles are formed in the silence between tears. God knows that it's in the breaking that faith is purified, that in the darkness the light within you learns to burn brighter. And he allows that moment not to test your worth but to reveal his faithfulness. Because tears are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that you are still alive, still feeling, still believing. Think of the tears you've cried in the middle of the night when no one knew what you were facing. The world saw only your endurance, but God saw your surrender. He saw the way your hands trembled in prayer when you had no strength left to lift them. He saw how you kept going when everything in you wanted to stop. Those moments became the altar of your miracle. Heaven doesn't respond to perfection. It responds to authenticity. The raw, honest cry of a wounded heart reaches deeper into God's presence than the most polished words ever could. Every tear you shed has purpose. It waters the ground where your miracle will grow. What seems like salt and sorrow now will soon become the rain that nourishes new beginnings. You may think you've lost too much, that the pain was wasted, but nothing you've lived is in vain. God is using every fragment, every broken piece, every sleepless night to prepare the restoration you didn't even know you needed. Your tears are a language heaven understands perfectly. When words fail, Tears speak the purest truth of the heart, and God listens to every syllable. So when you feel forgotten, remember this: heaven keeps a record of your cries. Not one was lost in the air. The same God who watched you break is the one preparing to lift you up. The same moments that brought you to your knees will soon become the reason you stand again. You will look back and realize that what you thought was silence was actually God's voice, quietly saying, "Hold on, I'm working." He never wastes a tear. He transforms them into miracles that unfold exactly when you're ready to see. And soon, you'll understand that the cry heaven never forgot was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of everything God promised to make new. There are cries that never reach human ears but shake the gates of heaven. You know those moments when pain becomes too heavy to describe, when you try to speak but the words fall apart before leaving your mouth. The world sees a calm face, but heaven sees the storm within you. That cry, the one you thought vanished into the darkness, was never ignored. It rose like a song only God could hear. He heard the sound of your breaking, and he turned his face toward you, not in judgment, but in compassion. What no one else noticed, he recorded with divine precision. Every tear that touched your pillow was counted. Every sigh that escaped your chest was remembered. Heaven keeps a perfect record of what the earth tries to overlook. You may have felt invisible, as if your suffering disappeared into an empty night, but in that silence, something sacred was happening. God was gathering your pain, shaping it, transforming it. The moment your tears fell, heaven began to move. Angels stood still because the sound of your cry carried the weight of faith still fighting to believe. And in the spiritual realm, that sound has power. God doesn't respond to noise, he responds to sincerity. He listens not to the volume of your voice, but to the truth behind your silence. Those tears, though unseen, spoke louder than any prayer you could have uttered. Sometimes we think God has forgotten us because we mistake his silence for absence. But heaven's silence is never indifference. It's orchestration. God is not ignoring you. He is arranging the pieces of your miracle. The delay you feel is not denial, it's design. He uses your tears as divine ink to write the next chapter of your life. Every drop is a word, every sob a sentence in the story of redemption he's preparing. You may not see it yet, but what broke you will soon bless you. What made you weep will soon make you worship. When your heart cried out and no one came to help, he was already there, unseen, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal what he has been building in secret. Sometimes the most profound miracles are formed in the silence between tears. God knows that it's in the breaking that faith is purified, that in the darkness the light within you learns to burn brighter. And he allows that moment not to test your worth, but to reveal his faithfulness. Because tears are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that you are still alive, still feeling, still believing. Think of the tears you've cried in the middle of the night when no one knew what you were facing. The world saw only your endurance, but God saw your surrender. He saw the way your hands trembled in prayer when you had no strength left to lift them. He saw how you kept going when everything in you wanted to stop. Those moments became the altar of your miracle. Heaven doesn't respond to perfection. It responds to authenticity. The raw, honest cry of a wounded heart reaches deeper into God's presence than the most polished words ever could. Every tear you shed has purpose. It waters the ground where your miracle will grow. What seems like salt and sorrow now will soon become the rain that nourishes new beginnings. You may think you've lost too much, that the pain was wasted, but nothing you've lived is in vain. God is using every fragment, every broken piece, every sleepless night to prepare the restoration you didn't even know you needed. Your tears are a language heaven understands perfectly. When words fail, tears speak the purest truth of the heart, and God listens to every syllable. So when you feel forgotten, remember this: heaven keeps a record of your cries. Not one was lost in the air. The same God who watched you break is the one preparing to lift you up. The same moments that brought you to your knees will soon become the reason you stand again. You will look back and realize that what you thought was silence was actually God's voice, quietly saying, "Hold on, I'm working." He never wastes a tear. He transforms them into miracles that unfold exactly when you're ready to see. And soon, you'll understand that the cry heaven never forgot was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of everything God promised to make new. When silence speaks louder than words, there are seasons in life when heaven seems to fall completely silent. You pray, but the words echo back to you. You beg for a sign, but nothing happens. The silence becomes louder than any answer, and your faith starts to tremble under the weight of waiting. Yet that divine silence is not the absence of God. It is the space where His greatest works begin. When God is silent, He is not ignoring you. He is speaking in a language your spirit must learn to understand. Silence is the sacred classroom of faith, where the noise of the world fades and only the whisper of eternity remains. There is a mystery in the way God moves when nothing appears to move. Sometimes He hides His voice not to punish you, but to make you seek Him with a deeper hunger. It's in that holy quiet that your heart begins to tune itself to His frequency. You start to hear what can't be heard with human ears, the pulse of heaven aligning your story to His purpose. While you are asking why, God is arranging the when. While you wait for the answer, He is building the foundation for a miracle that cannot be shaken. What feels like silence is actually construction. In those moments, your emotions scream louder than your prayers, and it feels like you've been abandoned. But God's silence is not rejection, it's refinement. Just as gold is purified by fire, faith is perfected by silence. When the noise of life stops, your soul begins to listen. The absence of sound is the birthplace of revelation. God allows the silence to strip away everything that's superficial, until your faith is no longer built on emotion but on trust. Because true faith is not proven when God speaks, it's proven when He doesn't. There is a rhythm in divine timing that no human heart can rush. Sometimes heaven's silence is the pause before the symphony. It's the stillness before the miracle. Think of the seed buried underground. It appears lifeless, forgotten, but in that dark silence, life is forming. God's silence works the same way. He buries your prayers not to forget them, but to transform them. And when the time is right, what seemed dead begins to bloom. Your waiting becomes the very soil of your miracle. You may not realize it now, but there are blessings that could not survive if they arrived too soon. God knows when your heart is ready to receive what you've been asking for. That's why His silence is an act of mercy, not neglect. He delays answers to protect your destiny from premature arrival, because miracles born before maturity can turn into burdens. So He waits, He watches, He prepares. And while you question where He is, He's standing right beside you, silent but sovereign, working beyond what your eyes can see. The silence of God is not empty. It's full of direction, purpose, and meaning. It's in that quiet space that He rewrites your future. You learn to stop demanding and start trusting. You realize that faith is not about hearing God's voice, but knowing He's present even when He doesn't speak. The silence becomes sacred ground. It breaks your dependence on signs and deepens your reliance on His character. You begin to see that what you thought was a delay was actually divine alignment, a redirection towards something far greater than your plans. Every believer who ever walked with God faced this silence. Abraham, Joseph, Mary, even Jesus in the garden. It's the silence that separates those who believe in miracles from those who become them. You are not being ignored. You are being invited into a deeper faith, a faith that no storm can shake. Because once you learn to trust God in the silence, you will never doubt Him again in the noise. So if heaven feels quiet right now, don't fear it. Rest in it. God is not done. He is preparing something that will make the silence worth every tear. The day will come when you'll look back and realize that His silence was never the end. It was the space He used to form the miracle that will soon speak louder than any answer you were expecting. The hidden dialogue between you and God. There are moments when words are no longer enough, when your voice trembles in prayer, and you can only whisper what your heart can barely hold. Those are the moments when a hidden dialogue begins, one that no one around you can hear, yet heaven listens to with perfect attention. This is not a conversation of sound, it's an exchange of souls. Your tears speak the language of trust. Your sighs translate what your heart cannot say. And your silence becomes the deepest kind of prayer. God doesn't need eloquence to understand you. He reads what your spirit feels before you can even shape it into words. Every ache, every fear, every quiet moment when you thought no one noticed, God was already answering, not through thunder or visions, but through a still, steady presence that never left you. There's a secret communication that flows between your pain and His promise. While you cry, He listens. While you break, He rebuilds. While you surrender, He speaks through peace. This hidden dialogue isn't written on paper or spoken aloud. It's carved in eternity. It's the sacred exchange between Creator and creation, where suffering becomes seed and hope takes root. You may think your prayers are lost in the air, but heaven records every whisper. Even the prayer you were too tired to finish reached Him. God hears the language of exhaustion, the quiet tremor in your chest, the sigh that escapes before sleep. Nothing you express in sincerity goes unheard. That is why the invisible conversation between you and God never stops. It continues in every moment you choose faith over fear, trust over doubt, love over despair. When you feel forgotten, your faith still speaks on your behalf. When you feel broken, your endurance prays for you. There's a beauty in realizing that prayer is not always spoken. Sometimes it's felt. God doesn't require sound. He requires sincerity. The moments when you stare at the ceiling, wondering if He's still there, are often the moments when He's the closest. He's not waiting for perfect words. He's waiting for your honest heart. The Bible says that before a word is on your tongue, He already knows it completely. That means the deepest conversations you'll ever have with God will happen in silence. It's in that sacred quiet that He reminds you who you are and who He has always been, faithful, near, and unchanging. In this hidden dialogue, God often answers in ways you might overlook. A sudden calm after the storm, a verse that appears just when you need it, a door closing that prevents greater pain. His voice doesn't always sound like speech. Sometimes it feels like alignment. You begin to sense that something greater is guiding your steps, something unseen yet undeniable. That is the Holy Spirit translating your tears into divine action, turning your cries into new beginnings. Every silent prayer becomes a spiritual transaction, exchanged for strength, clarity, and the courage to continue. Even in your doubt, the dialogue continues. God doesn't stop listening when your faith falters. He listens when you question, when you complain, when you don't understand. That's what makes His love so vast. He's not waiting for perfection. He's waiting for connection. In fact, it's often in your most fragile prayers that the most powerful answers are born. You think you're losing faith, but in truth, you're learning what faith really means. Not control, but surrender. Not certainty, but confidence in His presence. The hidden dialogue between you and God is a love story written in sighs, tears, and hope. You may never hear His words the way you expect, but you will feel them in the way your heart refuses to give up. He speaks through endurance, through unexpected peace, through the strength that rises in you after the storm. What He whispers in silence is often more powerful than anything spoken aloud. You just have to listen, not with your ears, but with your spirit. Because in every moment of pain, every question, every breath, there is a divine voice responding, "I am here." The weight of invisible battles. There are battles that no one sees. You wake up, smile, and face the world as if everything is fine, while inside, a storm rages that only you and God know exists. These invisible battles don't leave scars that people can point to, but they drain your strength in silence. You keep walking, pretending to be strong while carrying 1,000 unspoken fears, a heart full of unanswered prayers, and a soul that's been fighting for too long without rest. You fight with anxiety that no one knows you have, with memories that refuse to fade, with doubts that whisper in the quiet moments of the night. And yet, even in that unseen struggle, God is present, closer than the pain itself, watching, strengthening, holding you together when everything in you wants to fall apart. The world often misunderstands silent fighters. People think faith means always feeling strong, but true faith often lives in trembling hands and tear-stained faces. It's in the choice to stand again when your strength has already been spent. It's in the decision to smile when your heart still aches. Those who carry invisible battles are the ones God calls His warriors, because every day they face an enemy that no one else can see, and still they keep believing. You may not wear armor or wield a sword, but your persistence is proof that heaven fights with you. Your endurance is not unnoticed. It's divine courage disguised as survival. Sometimes you wonder why the struggle doesn't end, why peace feels so distant. The truth is that invisible battles aren't punishment. They are preparation. God uses what no one else sees to build what everyone will one day witness. He trains your spirit in silence, develops your resilience in the unseen. It's in those hidden wars that character is forged. Faith is refined and purpose is born. Every tear becomes oil for your anointing. Every wound becomes wisdom for the future. The struggle you're enduring is shaping you into the person who can carry the miracle you once prayed for. You might feel weak, but the strength of heaven flows through the cracks of your vulnerability. The moments when you break are the moments God builds deeper foundations. Every breakdown you faced has secretly strengthened your roots. The deeper the pain, the stronger your purpose. God allows invisible battles because He knows the public victory that follows will reveal His power, not your defeat. The very tears that fall in silence are watering the soil of a future testimony that will one day set others free. What feels like loneliness is actually divine intimacy, because only those who walk through hidden pain can truly understand the depth of God's comfort. There is a sacred exchange happening in your silent struggle. Every time you choose not to give up, heaven records it. Every time you pray through exhaustion, God responds with grace. Every time you forgive what hurt you, He adds new strength to your spirit. The invisible battles you face are producing visible blessings you haven't yet seen. You may feel unseen by people, but you are never unseen by God. He knows the nights you cried quietly, the mornings you almost didn't rise, the moments you questioned His plan. None of it is wasted. Every invisible wound is an open door for His healing power to enter. The enemy wants you to believe that your pain means abandonment, but the truth is, it means calling. You've been chosen to carry light through darkness, to walk through fire and emerge refined. The weight you feel is not just suffering, it's sacred responsibility. You're becoming a vessel capable of carrying hope to others. One day, the same invisible battle that tried to destroy you will be the very testimony that saves someone else. You'll look back and understand that the unseen war was the birthplace of your purpose. So don't despise the weight you carry. Don't curse the silence or the hidden pain. God sees every bit of it. He's not distant, He's deliberate. He's using the unseen to build the unshakable. You may be fighting an invisible war, but you are not fighting alone. Heaven fights beside you. Grace sustains you, and victory is already written in your name. One day soon, the battle that no one saw will become the miracle everyone will witness, and you'll realize that the weight you carried was the bridge that led you straight into God's arms. The sacred chemistry of tears. There is something divine hidden within every tear. To the human eye, they are just drops of water, but in the eyes of God, they are liquid prayers. Each tear carries emotion, truth, and faith distilled into its purest form. The moment it falls, heaven reacts. There is a sacred chemistry in those tears, something invisible yet powerful, that transforms pain into purpose, loss into light, and sorrow into strength. God designed tears not only to cleanse your eyes, but to cleanse your soul. When you cry, you release what words cannot express, and in that release, the Spirit of God begins to move. What you call breakdown, heaven calls breakthrough in progress. Science says that tears contain salt and water, but spiritually, they carry history and hope. Every tear holds a fragment of your journey. The disappointments, the prayers unanswered, the faith tested and tried. Yet beyond the biology lies a divine design. Your tears change the spiritual atmosphere around you. When you cry before God, your tears become intercession, breaking chains that your voice could never reach. They purify the heart from bitterness, pride, and fear, preparing you for new revelations. Heaven never despises a weeping soul. It leans closer. The Holy Spirit draws near, not to witness your weakness, but to perform healing so deep that no word could ever reach it. When you weep in prayer, something happens that cannot be seen by human eyes. Your tears mix with grace and turn into something sacred. They touch the heart of God, and He begins to transform them into answers that will return to you in unexpected ways. Sometimes the miracle you seek doesn't arrive as a sudden sign, but as peace that settles after the tears. You rise from prayer lighter, calmer, stronger, without realizing that the very act of crying has shifted the weight from your heart to God's hands. This is divine chemistry. Pain transformed into faith, sorrow converted into surrender, weakness exchanged for spiritual power. Think of how many times the Bible shows tears as the doorway to transformation. Hannah's tears opened her womb. David's tears birthed psalms that still heal hearts centuries later. Jesus Himself wept before raising Lazarus, proving that even divinity does not bypass pain, it transforms it. Your tears are not a sign that you failed in faith. They are proof that you are alive in spirit. The world teaches you to hide them, but heaven calls them holy. There is no shame in weeping before God because tears are the truest offering of the human heart. They say what sermons cannot. They reach where logic stops, and they carry your soul to the throne of mercy. When God collects your tears, He does not keep them as reminders of pain, but as evidence of faith. Each drop becomes a seed of redemption planted in divine soil. And like rain, those tears will not return empty. They will water the promises waiting to grow. The day will come when you'll stand in the light of answered prayers and realize that your miracle sprouted from the ground you once soaked with tears. This is why you should never despise the moments you cry. You are not breaking down. You are releasing heaven's formula for transformation. God created you with the capacity to feel deeply because He Himself feels deeply. When you cry, you reflect His own image, the God who feels compassion, who mourns with the brokenhearted, who rejoices when the weary find rest. Tears are the proof that you still believe love is possible, that hope is not dead, and that your spirit has not surrendered to numbness. They are not weakness but worship. They are liquid faith, visible only for a moment before they disappear, leaving behind invisible miracles in motion. So when your eyes fill with tears again, don't rush to wipe them away. Let them fall into God's hands. Let Him perform the sacred chemistry that turns grief into grace. Trust that behind every tear, something holy is happening. Something that will one day return to you as joy, as peace, as testimony. Because in God's divine equation, no tear is wasted, no pain forgotten, and no heart that cries in faith will ever remain the same. When God hides you to heal you. There are times when God hides you, and you don't even realize it. Doors that once opened suddenly close. Opportunities vanish, people drift away, and the silence feels unbearable. You think something went wrong, but heaven is simply moving you out of reach so the healing can begin. When God hides you, it's never rejection, it's redirection. He separates you from the noise of the world to restore what life has broken. What looks like isolation is divine incubation. It's the season when He repairs what others damaged, when He rebuilds what time tried to destroy. You're not being forgotten, you're being prepared. You see, healing rarely happens in public view. God performs His greatest miracles behind closed doors. When He hides you, He's protecting your process from exposure. The same way a seed must stay buried to grow, you must sometimes disappear for a season so your roots can deepen. No one sees what's happening, but transformation is taking place beneath the surface. While you mourn what you lost, God is quietly removing the poison from your heart. He's taking the bitterness, the disappointment, the fear, and turning them into wisdom, strength, and peace. You may feel buried, but you're only being planted. The hiding season is sacred because it strips away every illusion of control. You begin to realize that the people who left were not punishment, they were protection. God removed them because their presence would have contaminated your healing. He shields you from conversations that would reopen your wounds, from places that no longer fit who you're becoming, and from situations that would delay your destiny. You might call it loneliness, but heaven calls it recovery. In stillness, God begins to rebuild you from the inside out. What was once chaos becomes calm. What once hurt now teaches. What once broke you becomes the foundation for your restoration. During these hidden seasons, you may question everything. You might ask why God took certain things away, or why He allowed you to walk through the valley alone. But every divine hiding has a purpose. When you're out of sight, God is in full view. He is closest in the moments you feel most abandoned. He doesn't hide you to take from you. He hides you to give something greater. He uses solitude to reveal what distractions had buried. You begin to see yourself through His eyes again. You remember your worth, your calling, your identity. Healing begins when you no longer measure yourself by what left, but by the one who stayed. Sometimes God hides you because He knows the noise of the world would drown out His whisper. You can't hear His voice in the crowd, so He draws you into the wilderness where His words can echo louder. Every great transformation in Scripture began in hidden places. Moses in the desert, Joseph in the prison, David in the cave. The hidden season is not punishment. It's preparation for visibility. You are being shaped in silence so you can shine in purpose. God cannot reveal publicly what was not restored privately. The weight of your future demands the strength that only solitude can build. There's beauty in being hidden, though it rarely feels that way. It's the time when your heart becomes tender again, when forgiveness becomes possible, when you finally stop fighting and start surrendering. The pain that once consumed you begins to lose its power. The tears that once burned now heal. The voice that once questioned now trusts. You start to realize that being unseen by people made you seen by God in a deeper way. You were never invisible to Him. He just needed you away from everything that blinded you to His presence. So if you feel overlooked or forgotten, understand this truth. You're not lost, you're loved enough to be hidden. God doesn't heal in haste. He heals in holiness. He hides you to protect the miracle in progress. And when the time is right, He will bring you back into the light, not as who you were, but as who you've become through the process. You will emerge stronger, softer, wiser, and ready. The world will see the change, but they'll never know the depth of the silence that made it possible. Because when God hides you to heal you, He doesn't just mend your wounds, He reshapes your soul for destiny. The valley where miracles begin. There comes a moment when life leads you into a valley so deep that you can no longer see the mountaintop. The air feels heavy, hope feels distant, and everything that once gave you strength seems to have vanished. This is the valley, the place where faith is tested, where prayers seem unanswered, and where silence stretches endlessly. It's the place most people fear, yet it's the very ground where God plants the seeds of miracles. Because miracles never begin on the mountaintop. They begin in the valley, where human strength ends and divine power begins. The valley is not a punishment, it's a process. It's where your heart is stripped of illusions and pride, where you learn what faith truly means. Up on the mountain, faith feels easy, but in the valley, faith becomes real. God allows you to walk through the shadows not to break you, but to prove that even in darkness, He is still light. The valley is where trust stops being an idea and becomes a lifeline. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Help me." That's when heaven bends close. That's when God begins to reveal Himself, not through answers, but through presence. Every great story of faith was written in the valley. David found his courage there. Joseph discovered his destiny there. Even Jesus passed through his own valley, Gethsemane, before resurrection. The valley is the holy paradox where pain and purpose meet. It's not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of transformation. The tears that fall here are not wasted. They water the soil of your future testimony. You may feel buried, but in truth, you are being rooted. What looks like loss is often preparation. God is cultivating resilience in the dark so that when the light returns, you will not only stand, you will shine. In the valley, Everything slows down. The noise of the world fades, and all that remains is your breath and His. That's where you begin to see the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness cries out for rescue, but solitude makes space for revelation. It's there, in the quiet ache of surrender, that God teaches you to depend on Him completely. You learn that your miracle doesn't come from escaping the valley, but from finding Him within it. You stop fighting the process and start listening for His whisper. And in that stillness, faith is reborn. Not the kind that needs proof, but the kind that trusts without sight. The valley strips you of what is shallow so that what is eternal can take root. It teaches you the language of endurance, the rhythm of trust, the strength of stillness. It's not where God forgets you, it's where He refines you. Every unanswered prayer, every silent night, every heavy step is shaping something unseen. You think you're walking through darkness, but you're actually walking through destiny. The valley is where your character catches up to your calling. Without it, you would never have the strength to carry the miracle waiting ahead. The beauty of the valley is that it's temporary. No one stays there forever. But you cannot rush it, because it's in this sacred in-between that your miracle takes form. The same God who led you into the valley will walk you out of it, but not until you've learned what He brought you there to see. You'll come out lighter, stronger, and more grounded. You'll realize that the valley didn't destroy you. It discovered you. It revealed who you truly are when all you had left was faith. So if you find yourself in the valley right now, don't despair. You're standing on holy ground disguised as hardship. The valley is not the grave of your faith. It's the cradle of your miracle. This is where God turns mourning into dancing, ashes into beauty, fear into strength. You are not forgotten here. You are being formed. And when you emerge, you won't just have survived. You'll have become the living proof that miracles are born in the lowest places, where only faith can see the light before the dawn. The invisible hand, guiding every delay. Delays can feel like the hardest form of silence. You pray, you plan, you wait, and nothing moves. Doors stay closed, answers don't come, and your heart starts to question whether God still remembers you. But what feels like delay is often divine precision. The invisible hand of God is guiding every moment you call late. He's not postponing your blessing. He's perfecting its timing. Because an early miracle can become a burden, and a late miracle can test your faith. But a miracle that comes in God's time will never be undone. When heaven seems slow, it's because eternity is aligning something far greater than what you asked for. God is never in a hurry, yet He's never late. He sees what you cannot, the hearts that must change before they meet you, the paths that must open before you walk them, the battles that must be won before your blessing arrives. You see delay as waiting. He sees it as preparation. While you're praying for the door to open, He's strengthening the floor beneath you so it can hold the weight of what's coming. Heaven's timing always carries mercy hidden within it. If God gave you everything you wanted when you asked for it, it might have destroyed you. But in His love, He withholds until it can heal instead of harm. There's a purpose behind every pause. When God holds you in waiting, it's not punishment. It's protection. You're not stuck. You're being strategically positioned. The delay that frustrates you is often the very thing saving you. Maybe He's keeping you from rushing into something that would drain your spirit. Maybe He's slowing you down so you don't settle for less than His best. Faith grows strongest when patience takes root. The waiting season isn't wasted. It's where your trust matures and your perspective shifts. You stop begging for speed and start praying for alignment. You begin to understand that the timing of heaven is not measured by clocks but by readiness. Think of Joseph, forgotten in the prison for years. To human eyes, it was delay, but in heaven's plan, it was development. When his moment finally came, he wasn't just free, he was prepared to lead. The invisible hand that seemed still was writing destiny behind the curtain. The same is true for you. What you think is inactivity is often divine choreography. God is arranging details that your eyes cannot see, creating connections, adjusting hearts, and making sure that when the miracle comes, it fits perfectly with your purpose. Every "not yet" from God carries the promise of a now that will arrive right on time. The truth is, waiting reveals what you truly believe. When everything is delayed, your trust is tested. Do you believe in God's plan only when it moves fast? Or do you trust His heart even when nothing moves at all? Waiting exposes impatience so that faith can take its place. It teaches you to live in surrender instead of control. It's easy to believe in God's power when doors fly open. Real faith believes even when the hallway feels endless. Because behind every closed door, the invisible hand is turning the key slowly, ensuring that when it opens, you'll walk through without fear, without doubt, without looking back. Every second of waiting is sacred. You may not feel progress, but heaven counts differently. God's hand is never idle, it's intentional. When He delays, He's often working on a miracle so intricate that only hindsight will reveal how every moment mattered. One day you'll look back and see how perfectly it all fit together. The people who appeared at the right time, the ones who left when they needed to, the detours that led you exactly where you were meant to be. The delay wasn't a denial, it was divine direction. So don't lose heart if things seem motionless. The invisible hand of God is steady, precise, and always on time. He's writing the story of your life with a rhythm that only heaven can compose. Trust that every pause has purpose, every delay has meaning, and every waiting heart that stays faithful will one day see what the silence was preparing. When your moment finally arrives, you'll realize the waiting wasn't empty, it was sacred. You'll see that the invisible hand that seemed slow was, in truth, the very force guiding you toward everything you prayed for, at the exact moment your heart was ready to receive it. The moment heaven rewrites your story. There comes a time when heaven decides that your story as it is can no longer stay the same. It's not something you see coming, nor something you can control. It happens quietly, sometimes after your last tear, sometimes after your final surrender. One day, you simply feel it, the shift. The weight begins to lift, the silence starts to break, and deep inside your spirit, you sense that something greater has begun. That's the moment heaven rewrites your story. The pain that once defined you becomes a paragraph, not the ending. The chapters of disappointment begin to close, and the author of creation picks up the pen again, writing not from your past, but from His promise. When heaven rewrites your story, it doesn't erase what happened, it redeems it. The broken moments remain, but they no longer bleed. They become landmarks of grace, reminders that God was present even in the dark. The people who left, the doors that closed, the prayers that seemed unanswered, all of them find their meaning in the new chapter God begins. What once hurt you starts to make sense, not because it was fair, but because it was forming something holy within you. Heaven's rewriting doesn't always look like a miracle from the outside. Sometimes it looks like peace after years of war, forgiveness where bitterness once lived, or laughter rising again after long silence. When God begins to rewrite, He doesn't need to ask permission from your past. He doesn't consult your failures, nor does He require approval from those who misunderstood you. He simply speaks, and the story shifts. One divine word can undo years of sorrow. One touch can erase the residue of regret. That's the power of grace. It doesn't just repair, it recreates. It turns what was meant to destroy you into the very evidence of His goodness. The same hand that wrote your pain now writes your redemption. The very pen that once recorded your tears now writes your testimony. You might not feel the change at first. Sometimes heaven's rewriting begins in small, quiet ways. You wake up one morning, and the burden that used to crush you feels lighter. The things that used to steal your peace no longer hold power. The same world looks different because you're no longer carrying it alone. That's when you realize God has shifted the narrative. He's no longer telling the story of your suffering. He's telling the story of your survival. What once broke you now blesses others through your words, your strength, your faith. The pain you thought would bury you has become the seed of your purpose. Every divine rewrite starts with surrender. God cannot transform what you keep trying to control. The moment you release the pen and say, "Lord, write what you will," He begins to create beauty where there was once only ashes. The hardest part is trusting Him when you can't yet see the new chapter forming. But that's where faith comes alive. in the waiting between endings and beginnings. The old you fades, the old patterns die, and slowly, the masterpiece emerges. The author never stopped writing. He was just waiting for the moment you'd stop fighting the plot. And when heaven rewrites your story, it doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as the wounded one and start seeing yourself as the chosen one. You stop reliving the pain and start living the purpose. What once was shame becomes strength. What once was loss becomes legacy. Heaven rewrites not with ink, but with mercy, using every broken line of your life as part of a greater design. So if you feel like your story has gone too far in the wrong direction, remember this: you are one prayer away from a rewrite. God can take the worst chapter and turn it into the testimony that touches the world. The pages you thought were ruined are the very ones He will use to reveal His glory. He's not done writing, and your best chapters are still unwritten. When heaven rewrites your story, no mistake, no pain, no past can stop the future He has prepared. The same God who saw you cry is now the one lifting your head to say, "This is where everything changes." And when He says that, the story you thought was over becomes the miracle that begins again. The signs that your miracle is already moving. There comes a moment when heaven begins to move, and even if you can't see it yet, something inside your spirit starts to sense the change. It's that quiet assurance that what you prayed for is no longer a dream. It's in motion. The signs don't always arrive with thunder or flashes of light. They come gently, like the first wind before the rain, subtle enough for only a heart in faith to notice. You start to feel a peace that doesn't make sense, a calm in the middle of what should still be chaos. That's not coincidence. It's confirmation. Heaven doesn't announce every miracle with noise. Sometimes it whispers, "It's already happening." The first sign that your miracle is moving is that the battle inside you begins to shift. The fear that used to paralyze you starts to lose its grip. The thoughts that once told you to give up start to fade, and in their place comes quiet endurance. You begin to hope again, even without evidence. That's the Spirit of God breathing strength into your heart. Miracles don't begin around you, they begin within you. When your heart starts to rest even though nothing has changed, that's the seed of divine movement. Before the walls of Jericho fell, the people marched. Before Lazarus rose, there was a moment of silence. The miracle always starts before the manifestation. Sometimes the signs come through timing that suddenly feels divine. Conversations align, opportunities appear, paths cross that never could have by chance. You feel as if the universe itself has bent slightly in your direction. That's God adjusting the details, weaving your story into His perfect design. You may not understand how it's all fitting together, but faith recognizes the rhythm of heaven. Every small shift, every unexpected connection, every sense of clarity where there once was confusion. These are signs that heaven has entered the scene. And then there's the sign that no one sees but you, a renewed strength that rises when it shouldn't. You wake up one day and realize that what once broke you no longer has power over you. The same pain that once drained you now teaches you. That's resurrection energy, the breath of God animating what once seemed dead. You begin to move differently, speak differently, believe differently. You're no longer waiting for proof because peace itself has become your proof. There are also subtle echoes in the physical world. You'll notice songs, verses, or phrases that keep appearing. Moments that feel like gentle winks from heaven reminding you that you're on the right path. A conversation that speaks directly to your prayer. A door that opens after months of waiting. The right person showing up just when you're ready to receive help. None of it is random. Heaven doesn't work by coincidence. It moves by confirmation. When miracles start moving, opposition often rises too. The closer you are to breakthrough, the louder the resistance becomes. But that too is a sign. The enemy only fights what threatens him. Pressure increases right before the release, and darkness always tries to hide what dawn is about to reveal. So if you're facing fresh challenges even after praying faithfully, don't panic. It means something powerful is approaching. You're standing on the edge of the answer you've been asking for. The greatest sign of all is when gratitude begins to bloom before the miracle arrives. You stop asking when and start thanking God for now. You find yourself praising Him not because everything is fixed, but because you finally understand that He never stopped working. That shift from waiting to worship is the heartbeat of heaven. Miracles are born in hearts that trust without seeing, that sing before the victory, that give thanks before the blessing. So pay attention to the quiet signs, because the supernatural often moves in silence. You don't need a voice from heaven to confirm what your spirit already knows. The atmosphere is changing. The things you prayed for are aligning. The delays are making sense. What you thought was still far away has already begun to unfold. The miracle is not coming, it's moving. And soon, what you've believed in faith will become what you see with your eyes. The gift, hidden inside your pain. Pain often feels like punishment, but in God's hands it becomes preparation. Every wound you've carried, every loss that broke your heart, holds a gift waiting to be revealed. The problem is that pain hides its purpose well. It covers truth with sorrow, disguises growth as grief, and buries blessings beneath the ashes of disappointment. But when heaven looks at your pain, it doesn't see tragedy. It sees transformation. God never wastes what you've endured. The very thing that hurt you the most often becomes the birthplace of your deepest wisdom and your greatest strength. Pain refines what comfort could never touch. When everything is easy, you don't need to grow. But when everything hurts, your spirit begins to expand in ways your mind can't yet understand. You start to see life differently. What once mattered loses its hold, and what truly matters begins to shine. Pain breaks illusions. It forces honesty. It exposes what's fragile so God can rebuild it with what's eternal. The moments that felt like endings were actually invitations to heal, to learn, to surrender. Every scar on your soul tells a story, and if you let God write the next part, that story will become a testimony. The gift inside pain is perspective. You begin to see that not everything lost was meant to stay. Some things had to leave so your heart could make room for better things. The rejection that once humiliated you becomes redirection. The betrayal that shattered your trust becomes the lesson that refines your discernment. The failure that crushed your confidence becomes the foundation of wisdom. Nothing that happens to you is wasted when it passes through the hands of God. He can turn the ashes of your sorrow into soil where new dreams grow. Pain also reveals what you truly believe. It strips away pretense and tests the roots of your faith. You can quote verses when life is calm, but in the storm you learn if you really trust them. And that's the beauty of divine pain. It doesn't destroy, it deepens. It takes your faith from theory to experience, from words to revelation. You begin to know God not just as a provider, but as a comforter, not just as a promise maker, but as a promise keeper. You discover that He's not just with you in victory, He's with you in agony, holding you together when everything else falls apart. The more you've suffered, the more compassion grows within you. Pain softens what pride hardens. It teaches you how to love gently, listen deeply, forgive freely. When you've been through enough darkness, you stop judging others for their night. You learn to speak softly to the wounded because you recognize their silence. You become a vessel of healing because you've been healed by grace. The same pain that once silenced you becomes the language through which you speak hope to others. That's the hidden gift. Your suffering equips you to comfort those still searching for strength. Even when you don't understand it, God is weaving your pain into purpose. The tears you shed become the ink of your calling. The losses you endured create the depth that makes your faith believable. People may admire your joy, but they'll be transformed by your scars. What once embarrassed you will one day empower you. The moments that broke you will become the proof that God restores. Your pain is not a mark of shame. It's a medal of survival. Every wound that healed became a doorway through which God entered deeper into your life. So don't curse the pain that shaped you. Don't despise the nights that forced you to depend on grace. Those moments didn't define your ending. They designed your becoming. The gift hidden inside your pain is not just strength, it's revelation. You've seen the bottom and survived. Now you can walk in peace, knowing nothing can separate you from the hand that carried you through. One day, you'll thank God not only for what He gave, but for what He took away. Because everything He removed, He replaced with something eternal. And that is how pain becomes purpose. When what once wounded you becomes the very thing that sets you free. The miracle in your tears. The final revelation, or type the changes you want. There comes a moment when you finally understand that every tear had a reason. Not one was wasted, not one fell unnoticed. They were not signs of weakness, but evidence of faith that refused to die. Those tears, the ones you cried in silence, became the very language through which God wrote your miracle. Heaven never forgot them. They became seeds planted in the soil of your destiny, watered by your perseverance and illuminated by divine mercy. You thought they were falling to the ground, but they were rising to the throne. What you saw as grief, heaven saw as worship. What you called pain, God called preparation. And now, the miracle you've been waiting for is being born out of the very tears that once broke you. Miracles rarely begin in joy, they begin in surrender. God never needed your perfection. He needed your heart, raw and honest, the kind that still turns to Him even when everything hurts. Every tear that escaped your eyes carried trust, even when you didn't feel it. And God took that trust, multiplied it, and turned it into power. The same moments that felt like endings were, in truth, the beginning of resurrection. You thought you were falling apart, but heaven was putting everything into place. The miracle didn't come from what you gained, it came from what you gave up in tears. Every person who walks with God must pass through this sacred transformation. The woman who cried at Jesus' feet didn't know her tears would become her testimony. Mary wept outside the tomb before witnessing resurrection. Even Jesus Himself wept before the miracle that would change history forever. Your tears have joined that same holy lineage. They are not reminders of defeat, but evidence of divine intimacy. To cry before God is to trust Him with the most fragile parts of yourself. That's why your tears carry power. They prove that you still believe even when you can't see. And now heaven answers. Slowly, quietly, and perfectly. The same God who collected your tears now pours them back as blessings. The peace you feel after chaos, the restoration of what was lost, the strength that rises from within you, all of it is the miracle unfolding. What once felt like breaking was actually birthing. God used your tears as tools to wash away everything that was not meant to stay. He cleansed your heart, healed your memories, and shaped your future through the flow of your faith. You may not recognize it at first, but the shift has already begun. The waiting season has turned into fulfillment. There will be a day when you look back and realize that those nights of crying were sacred appointments, that every lonely prayer built the foundation for the life you now live. The miracle was never delayed. It was developing. Every tear wrote a line in the story that would one day inspire others to keep believing. Your pain became purpose, your sorrow became song, and your weakness became witness. You will speak, and others will find hope, not because you avoided pain, but because you found God in it. The miracle in your tears is not only that your life is changing, it's that your heart is healed. God has turned your tears into testimony. What once broke you has now become your ministry. What once silenced you now gives you a voice to comfort the broken, to remind them that no pain is wasted when it's surrendered to heaven. You will stand where you once fell, and others will see in you the reflection of God's redemption. The tears that once blinded you have now cleared your vision, allowing you to see life through the lens of grace. You've learned that faith is not the absence of tears, but the decision to keep believing through them. This is the final revelation. Every tear was sacred, every cry was counted, every silence was filled with God's presence. You were never alone, not for a moment. The God who saw you weep has turned those tears into light, into miracles that will keep unfolding long after this moment ends. And as you walk forward, you no longer carry sorrow, you carry testimony, because the miracle was never somewhere out there. It was being formed within you, in every drop that fell from your eyes and rose to His heart. That is the miracle in your tears. the proof that love never leaves, faith never fails, and God never forgets.